I've got a story I want to tell you. It's a story that I've only told one person in the last 19 years. When I was 14 years old, I had the most terrifying experience of my life. And for the last 20 years, I haven't dealt with that. I haven't dealt with anything. And if you're seeing this video, it means it's my 34th, or at least it means that I published this video on my 34th birthday, which means that I've spent 20 years avoiding dealing with what happened to me, dealing with what I experienced, and trying to move beyond it, through it. I don't even know what the proper phrase would be. It was 2005. Bush Jr. was in the White House. The Killers were on the radio. Yep, radio. And I was in 7th grade in suburban Minnesota. The simple way to say what happened to me when I was 14 years old was that I realized I was going to die. And if you're my age, I assume you've probably had that experience in some shape or form. But for me, it came in a way that I don't think many people have experienced, or at least no one's really told me that no one's told me they've had a similar experience to this. I was in religion class, but I don't think that really had much to do with it. Our religion, textbook, was basically a coloring book. The teacher I had was not particularly good. I remember I was sitting by the window next to the heat register, and it was one of these blinding Minnesota January days where there's not a cloud in the sky and the sun is reflecting off of the snow, and the sun is hitting you from the top, it's hitting you from the bottom, and it is just brilliantly, alarmingly bright. And I don't know why, but I just started thinking about that I was going to die. And that in and of itself didn't bother me at the time. But then I started to wonder about what came after. And I knew we were supposed to believe in heaven, and we were supposed to believe that God was going to take care of us. And I started just wondering, what is this going to be like? And I tried to imagine just time going on and on and on. And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I tried to, and shit. I started just pushing my brain further and further, and it was almost like I was just on this train ride going deeper and deeper, and the sun was getting brighter and brighter, and then I just realized, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. And when I realized that whatever happens after death, the way I was imagining it, it just wasn't going to stop. And then it was dark. It was dark, and it kept going on. And I had what I now think was a panic attack. I felt the sensation was like cold eggs were rolling down my body. I could feel like it started on my head and rolled down my back, and it was just freezing and cold. I had what I now would call a full-blown panic attack about the unendingness of having to exist after death. And the sensation, the thing that bothered me about it was this overwhelming sensation that this was unavoidable. That whatever I did, there was no avoiding eventually dying and passing into whatever this endless oblivion was. And when you have that, it was like, I don't know if you've ever seen a kid like just completely lose their shit, like going up a roller coaster before the first hill, where your body just lurches and it's like pure fight or flight adrenaline, but there's nowhere to, you can't fight anything and there's nowhere to go because we're all going to die. And I knew that, and that intensified the fight over and over, the surge. And so there was the sensation of frozen eggs, and then there was just spasms. Just my body shook. And I both didn't want to think about it, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went home and I thought about it, and I had a panic attack on the couch. I was laying on the couch shaking like hell, and my parents didn't know what to do. Like, my mom pulled down the Bible off the shelf and started reading from a random page. At one point, they started reciting the Footprints in the Sand prayer, which is this ridiculously twee, devotional thing that was popular in the 90s. And I mean, these panics persisted well into my adult life. The last one I had was in my late 20s, where the overwhelming certainty and unavoidability of death hit me as I was driving home from work, and I punched the car. I punched the dashboard and the steering wheel of the car over and over again. And what happened when I was 14 after that has unfortunately been basically the mark of my entire life. What happened after that was that no adult helped me. No kids either, but I wouldn't ask kids. But every spiritual authority I went to came up so short. My parents had no idea what to do. They thought I was being bullied, and they tried to get me to go to a counselor. They sent me to talk to a priest, but this priest, I was asking theological questions. How can existing forever not be interminably suffer? How could that just not be total agony? I mean, I'll talk about this more in a future video, but if you think about it, we torture people with unending or seemingly unending things in this world. If you don't know when something's going to end, it is so much harder to endure it. But if you know that it's going to end, or if you know when it's going to end, you can sit through a lot of stuff, but it's always because the end is the relief. So how could I hope for something that's supposed to be unending? I mean, the Catholic Creed says, and I will talk about this more in a future video, the Catholic Creed says, I look forward to the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. How are you supposed to look forward to something that's unending? It wasn't death that I was afraid of. It was the unending everything after it. So I went to this priest, and he was spectacularly unhelpful. He told my parents to get me on antidepressants. So that was that. I went to the campus minister at my high school. Again, this is a Catholic school. My high school was 7 through 12. That's why I'm at a high school at this age. And before I got into her office, she told me to please ask the couch before I sat on it. So days, weeks, months went on, and I eventually got pretty good at ignoring or numbing this question. Shortly thereafter, I discovered pornography. And then when adult life came around, I found that I could medicate myself with a bottle of wine a day, which would keep the questions away. And I woke up about 5 months ago, realizing that my 34th birthday was coming up. And I realized for the last 20 years, I'd done nothing. I'd become nothing. I had drowned out this question, drowned out this problem, blamed the idiotic adults in my life for not answering it, but then I hadn't answered it. I hadn't taken care of that 14-year-old kid, and in a certain sense, I've become one of those adults. So now I owe it to that kid to at least get to the bottom of that question. What exactly happens after death, and how are we supposed to align ourselves to it? That's what I owe to that 14-year-old kid, because no other adult was going to answer that for him.